of you will have heard of the great W.D. Gann, who was the great trader of the early part of the 20th century, who supposedly the extra tool in his trading box was astrology. Now, it's very clear that he was indeed using natural cycles, but he was using also considerable technical analysis, and he was a real data junkie. And we could actually do a whole talk this evening just on looking at his chart and looking to see if our own charts, if we have any of the ingredients that he had. But central to Gann's thinking was the idea of using the seasonal points, the solstice and the equinoctial points of any year, he saw as being significant change places. So the dynamics change at these particular points. And so I'm starting my view of the last of this coming 2 years with looking at the most recent solstice chart. Now, many of you will be familiar with this one already. This was the 21st of December of last year, and as it happens, this chart here is set for London. But you'll remember that the big news story of the time was whether or not the great US of A was going to go over the fiscal cliff or not. And in the sky for the solstice was this rather incredible yod, and the most unusual yod, whose base was Saturn and Pluto in sextile, and with Jupiter at the apex of the yod. Now, you'll also know that Saturn and Pluto are themselves in mutual reception presently. So it doesn't really matter at the moment which arm we're looking at. You can think of Saturn as being in Capricorn and Pluto as being in Scorpio for the moment. But whichever way you look at this, that says something about a new foundation. Saturn and Pluto together in signs that they're comfortable with suggests that there is a new base position. At the apex of those, though, we had Jupiter at 8 degrees of Gemini. And Jupiter, as you know, is the biggest of all the planets, spinning on its axis every 8 hours, I think, throwing its thunderbolts all over the place. And if you like to think of it, Jupiter in Gemini, it was throwing ideas all over the place. What this chart was, though, was anything but conclusive. A yod is looking to find its direction. Now, for a completely different talk, I happened to have this photograph, and I thought that it was a very good picture to use this evening, because here we have a flock of birds. I'm not entirely sure about this guy up in the top right-hand corner, whether or not he's trying to leave the flock or joining it. But either way, you can see that this the V formation is still being formed. It's not quite finished yet. And I think Gann would have taken particular note of the fact that the yod for the 21st of December last year doesn't complete for a couple of months yet. Now, he would have taken some form of graph. I've done this using Solar Fire. You can use this with whatever software you have. And all I've done is I asked the machine to draw me using a 30-degree grid down here and just using the outer planets to trace the movements of each of the outer planets through whatever sign they were going to be in for the next few months between that solstice and the equinox. What you can see is around the 21st of December, as we noted, Saturn and Pluto were at a sextile to one another, and Jupiter was 150 degrees from both. Now, these are multiples, obviously, of 30 degrees. And in the financial world, you will find, as you do with natal astrology and anything else, that multiples of 30 degrees are extremely important. So too are the phase relationships underneath that, which means that you divide 30 by 2 and you have 15-degree layers. You divide it again and you look at the increments of 7.5 degrees. That's for another lecture. For now, we're just going to stick with these very simple 30-degree from one sign to another. And what we see is there's that yod forming in December of 2012, and here it is again in very, very close, as it happens, to the equinox in 2013.